Good evening, dear listeners. This is Michael Whitehouse. Tonight on Ghastly Tales, we unveil our latest new series. It's called Perilous Shortcuts. These stories are briefer in nature than our usual audio productions, short, sharp injections of horror, science fiction, and dark fantasy to help light the way in an otherwise darkened world. I'll see you at the end of tonight's episode with some important announcements, but for now, enjoy the show. Come with me now on a path less travelled, the quickest way from point A to B. But remember, no alternate route in life can come without a cost. Walk now into the Stygian nightmare beset on all sides by fear, dread, and terror. For who knows what wondrous horrors lie at the end of your perilous shortcut.
I know he's dead, but I just want to make sure,
said Ray as he prodded at the corpse's bloodied face one last time with his finger. He's dead. Satisfied? Asked Sal, keeping his eye on the night around them.
Not really. I wish he wasn't, so I could stick this knife in his eye.
Stop whining. Let's just get the job done. Don't want this to end up like last time. Sal gazed at his open pocket watch, a relic of the past which he was often given a hard time about by the guys. No one knew where he got it. In fact, Sal himself barely remembered the details, but that was because he had pushed the memory deep below. Killing an old man wasn't something of which he was proud, but he was green at the time, and it had been a job. Sal was a stickler for following orders. He'd taken the watch from the body, which he knew now was a sure way to get caught after a hit. A mistake he would never make again. He didn't know why he'd kept it, but he'd carried it with him ever since. A trophy, perhaps, a gentle reminder of his first kill, or for some twisted sense of remorse. Regardless, he used it on each and every job, a constant reminder of urgency. Closing the watch, agitated that once again they were behind on schedule, Sal walked around the body and dragged it towards the car. Ray shone a torch on the ground to make sure nothing had been left behind, as he knew he couldn't keep his job with too many more mistakes. They had been on a hit the previous March and nearly been caught because a set of keys had fallen out of the target's pocket after the kill. A snooty detective called Morvan found them. This wouldn't have been a problem, except one of the keys was for a safety deposit box in a local bank containing sensitive documents. Ray and Sal's boss didn't like that. After throwing the body in the boot of the car, Sal began the hour-long drive to the drop-off point. It was 1 a.m, and they were scheduled to meet Bone Crusher Banks around 2. He was the organisation's disposal expert, a hulking figure with a sluggish mind to match, but the boss always knew he could rely on him to make skin, blood, and gristle disappear into thin air. Banks had several modes of disposal, but his favourite was an old cotton mill on the outskirts of Windarm town. Ray and Sal didn't know the ins and outs, but they'd heard the rumours. He'd place each body in amongst the gears and cogs of the abandoned place and watch as they were turned into sludge.
"Why can't they play any good music these days?"
Ray offered as he twisted at the dial of the car radio. "Because you're out of touch, Ray. A musical dinosaur.
Not my fault if they don't make the good stuff anymore."
Both men had worked together for 18 years, but had failed to climb any higher in the organisation. Sal had aspirations. He wanted his own crew eventually, but he reckoned he'd been in the wrong place at the wrong time on a couple of jobs, which now made his dreams unlikely. Ray, on the other hand, couldn't have cared less. He just liked being part of the group, along with the perks. Women, drugs, violence, they all had a special place in his heart. Sal slowed down on the motorway, taking a slip road where there would be less traffic. Even at night the motorways could be busy, and all it would take was one wrong move or one over-eager police officer, and things could get dangerous. "What's that?" Sal asked as Ray sat in the passenger seat, staring at something in his hands. "A wallet." "Dumb bastard. This is why things are never simple with you. Put it back." "No, he doesn't need it anymore, and there's some interesting stuff in here." Ray continued to rifle through it, pulling out a picture. "Aw, look at this. His family." Looking over his shoulder towards the boot, he shouted, "Well, you ain't done them much good now, huh?" Sal slapped Ray on the back of the head forcefully. "Shut your mouth. Why is it you can never just stay calm and get the job done?" "I swear to God, Sal, you do that one more time and there will be 2 bodies to take to Bone Crusher," said Ray, rubbing the back of his head. Sal and Ray were close, but Ray had a line with people, one which only a fool would cross. After a long silence, which suited Sal just fine, they had arrived at the old mill. A couple of miles from anywhere, a lonely country road had led them there, the only sound the summer crickets chirping from the darkened undergrowth which covered the night landscape. The car's lights beamed forward, illuminating the mill, which was a substantial size, with bleached white walls covered in moss and dirt, hiding the rusted machinery of a bygone era within. Sal pulled out his pocket watch and grumbled about being late before stepping out of the car. This was the part Ray hated the most. He was never comfortable around Bone Crusher banks, and the wait outside could be intolerable as the shuffle of large and cumbersome footsteps creaked from inside the building. The sound of a metal lock struggling against a coating of rust soon screeched from a nearby door. Slowly it opened, revealing the stooped figure of Bone Crusher. Unshaven and unclean by the looks of things, his Neanderthal appearance was enough to make even Sal slightly uneasy. Without saying a word, Ray opened the boot of the car, after which Bone Crusher reached inside, grabbed the bloodied corpse with one hand, and wrenched it from its metal coffin. Lifting the body onto his shoulder like a lifeless marionette, he walked to the metal door of the mill. "The boss needs you two to deliver a package to Windham. Come inside." With that, Bone Crusher disappeared into the darkness, corpse and all. Sal tinkered with his pocket watch and began to tap it with his finger. It had stopped ticking, and for some reason this caused a sense of unease within him. He'd never had a problem with it before. Despite this, they had a job to do, and he'd fix the watch after the delivery. He then walked reluctantly towards the door before turning to Ray, whose shadow was stretched and skewed by the car's headlights. "You coming?" I'll stay out here, get some fresh air." Sal laughed. "Are you scared?" Pretty much, yeah. You get the package. I ain't going in there." "Suit yourself. I'll be back in a minute. Don't do anything stupid while I'm gone." Once inside the mill, the rusted door closed behind, and Sal's eyes adjusted to the darkness. Following a long, narrow hallway, he entered into a room lit by one solitary, buzzing fluorescent light. Bone Crusher Banks stood in the corner, brandishing a machete, sternly. Ray had just lit a cigarette when he first heard the screams. They were loud and shrieking, and unmistakably those of his partner. There was no doubt Bone Crusher had double-crossed them. Ray's first course of action was to jump into the car to make his escape. But then something incredible happened. He remembered two separate occasions when Sal had saved his life, once in a drug deal gone bad, and another when a rival crew took exception to Ray stabbing a prostitute on their turf. Then something even more peculiar took place. He found himself grabbing his knife from beneath the car seat and entering the building to save his, for want of a better word, friend. Altruism was never Ray's strong suit, and through a life of murder, violence, and betrayal, he'd always looked out for number one. But there he was, walking into an old abandoned mill in the middle of nowhere with the explicit intention to save Sal and cut up anyone that got in his way. Treading as quietly as he could, he remembered the old tricks. Cover your eyes for a moment to let them adjust quickly to the dark. Take off your shoes and walk on the outsides of your feet to cushion your footsteps. Clench your teeth to keep you alert. Check every corner and room on the way to your target. Sal's screams finally stopped as Ray walked towards a doorway lit by a buzzing fluorescent light from the room beyond. Ray calmed himself, steadying his heartbeat, and then entered, silently. Sal lay still on what looked like a metal surgical table, his pocket watch dangling over the side, fixed to his waistcoat by a golden chain. But Bone Crusher was nowhere to be seen. As Ray stood over Sal's motionless body, his friend opened his eyes sullenly. He was alive, clearly drugged or stunned, but alive nonetheless. Sal moved as if to speak, and Ray reacted immediately, putting his hand over his friend's mouth and pointing silently at the door for both of them to leave quickly. The only sound in the place was the buzzing from the light above, and in the almost silence, Ray hoped he could get both of them to the car without alerting anyone else. Sal nodded his head weakly in acknowledgement and began to move. A noise suddenly stirred from outside the room, from a second doorway which must have led deeper into the mill. Ray brandished his knife in one hand and helped Sal to his feet with the other, all the while keeping his eyes trained on the door, ready to act should Bone Crusher appear. As Ray turned to the exit, Sal plunged a 7-inch butcher's blade into his friend's stomach. Ray dropped his knife, falling backwards onto the floor, gasping for air as a stream of thick blood oozed out from the wound. Sal leaned over his friend while putting the pocket watch and chain back into his waistcoat. You never were the sharpest tool in the box, Ray. The mammoth figure of Bone Crusher Banks now entered the room, grabbing Ray with one massive hand and hoisting him off of the blood-soaked floor onto his shoulder. As they walked down a darkened corridor, Sal followed behind, trying to justify the kill to a weak and dying Ray, who winced in pain at the knife protruding from his stomach as his captor carried him to his end. The boss ordered it, man. There was nothing I could do. Orders are orders. You just keep messing up, Ray. And one day, we're all going to pay for it. Entering into a huge hall, Sal followed Bone Crusher up onto a large metal platform which hung in the air over a series of huge spinning gears several metres below. Screeching, pounding sounds filled the air, making it difficult to hear anything else, along with the stale smell of blood. Ray needed no introduction. He was about to become the latest addition to Bone Crusher's favourite form of disposal. Sal pulled out the old man's pocket watch, but its hands refused to move, a mechanical life which had ceased to be. "I don't know the time, but I think we might still be behind schedule, so let's hurry it up." Those words, though difficult to make out, mixed with the grinding sounds below and filtered through to Ray's half-conscious mind. Rage now took hold, betrayal, hatred. While the knife sticking out of his stomach was agony, and he would have pleaded for the pain to end even if it had meant death, Ray had no intention of going quietly. As the sound of machinery clanking and scraping suffocated the rusted frame of the abandoned mill, he summoned up every last ounce of strength he had in him. With a searing, blinding pain, he wrenched the butcher's knife out from his stomach and began stabbing Bone Crusher Banks in the back frenetically. Each plunge of the knife staggered the brute as Sal panicked and tried desperately to grab Ray's piston-like arm. As the lumbering Bone Crusher let out a loud yelp which could have come from a small child, Ray dragged his hand, knife and all, in a vicious horizontal strike in front of him. Sal stopped and stood still, his eyes wide and vacant for a moment. Grabbing his throat, blood began to seep out down his front as disbelief widened his gaze, which pointed hopelessly at his former partner. Wriggling like a worm on a hook, Ray now tried to free himself from Bone Crusher's failing grasp. However, his sharp movements had an undesired effect. The wounded Bone Crusher tripped forward, and as both men fell towards the deafening noise below, Ray grabbed out for a saviour, only to find Sal's old pocket watch, which secured all three men's fates over the side. Just before their bodies hit the grinding rusted gears of the mill, Ray thought he heard Sal say something about him being an idiot, but the sound of the machinery made it impossible to tell.
Come with me now on a path less travelled, the quickest way from point A to B. But remember, no alternate route in life can come without a cost. Walk now into the Stygian nightmare beset on all sides by fear, dread, and terror. For who knows what wondrous horrors lie at the end of your perilous shortcut. I hope you enjoyed tonight's episode of Perilous Shortcuts. I'm enjoying writing these shorter tales, and I can't wait for you to see what I've got in store for you all. If you'd like to support the show, please consider donating to our Patreon at patreon.com/Michael Whitehouse. Every penny raised goes towards keeping the lights on at Ghastly Tales, and the more we raise, the more stories and other content we can produce. Thanks to everyone who has supported the show so far. It means the world to us, and we mean that from the bottom of our darkened little hearts. While I'm here, please remember that you can listen to all of our audio content at theghastlytalespodcast.com and watch our short horror films and documentaries at youtube.com/Ghastly Tales. Well, looks like the storm is subsiding. Time for you to be on your way once more. But should you pass an old abandoned mill on your way home, do not enter it out of curiosity. The gears now lie silent, jammed by a rusted pocket watch. Do not try to retrieve it, for it has served its purpose, and I wouldn't want you to fall in, not as the machinery starts up once again. Unpleasant dreams, dear listeners, and I'll see you again soon for another ghastly tale.